everyone, welcome back to another episode of the NGA podcast, where we dive into all things gymnastics. Whether you're coaching, cheering from the sidelines, or a gymnast trying to reach that peak performance, this podcast is your go-to source for expert tips and inspiring stories that will empower you to excel. I'm your host, Rebecca Grady, and I'm here with my incredible co-hosts,
Dr. Ian Kreider,
Mike Nudor,
Rob Axelrod,
Thomas Britton.
All right, coaches. So if you've ever had one of those weeks where your gymnasts just seem off, maybe a little unmotivated, and seem like they're just going through the motions, this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about keeping our gymnasts engaged and motivated, not just during meet season, but throughout the ups and downs of training year-round. Because motivation isn't just about pep talks and setting goals, which are important, but it's about creating an environment that makes gymnasts want to show up and work hard. We'll talk about why motivation can fluctuate throughout training, strategies to re-engage gymnasts when they're checked out, and some common mistakes coaches can make that actually drain motivation instead of building it up. So let's get into this. First, let's talk about why motivation dips in the first place. We all know that this is normal. We all go through ups and downs, and so do our gymnasts. Sometimes it's burnout. Maybe the training has gotten repetitive. Maybe there's been a string of tough practices. Maybe a meet didn't go well, or they just happen to get an injury. Or maybe they've outgrown their reason for doing gymnastics and they need to refine that passion. A lot of the times, motivation drops when our athletes are working for external reasons. So that's when they're focusing on scores more, trying to reach a specific meet, when they're focusing on pleasing their coaches or parents, rather than finding something inside them that fuels their passion and why they love doing gymnastics. So I want to ask all you, how do you discuss motivation in your gym with your gymnasts, and in a way that encourages internal motivation versus external?
Well, I had a kind of a frank conversation with my gymnasts about a week and a half ago or so, where I kind of explained to them, hey, when I was a gymnast, I had to be self-motivated because I was the oldest guy in my gym. For like the last 2 years of my high school career before college, I was a level 10. Everybody else was like a level 6 or lower. And so for me, every day I show up, I have to have that motivation to meet the goals that I had, which was college gymnastics. And so I told them just kind of point blank, I'm like, hey, I'm not the best motivational speaker in the world, because I was always self-driven. I never felt the need to get that motivation externally. And so then I didn't have any example of how to do that for other people. And so I was like, hey, I will do my best to help motivate you guys and get some goals and good mindset. But at the end of the day, it does need to come from you. And you have to realize that you're doing the sport for your goals. And I'll do my best, but there's going to have to be some self-motivation along the way.
Yeah, I agree. At least in my gym, I was also in that oldest group when we were at the gym. I did have teammates, but we were the first group of level 10s to come out of my gym and graduate. So like you didn't really know how to do that for the guys below you necessarily. Yeah, we were trying to set the best example we can for the younger guys coming up below us. They looked up to us a lot because we were the first guys who've been there since we were like 5 years old, and we've all made it almost to the end now. We were about to graduate. Like you, Ian, I was fortunate enough to have several level 10s around me and teammates. And I think that's really helpful in terms of motivation when you're in practice some days, because you may feel like you're having just a really rough one, right? You're falling a bunch everywhere, you can't hit a set, so just one thing you can't get right, and your teammates are there to pick you up, right, help motivate you and get you hype again for practice. So especially competitions, and you're about to get up on that event, you start hearing them cheer for you and they're getting really loud. I think that's something that it's just like, oh, they're just being good teammates, but it has a real motivational effect. And so I think team camaraderie is something that's really important in terms of motivation, if you're maybe struggling with it personally.
Yeah, is there anything that you do to help team camaraderie?
Yeah, so on my team currently, it's a little bit different right now because it's kind of similar to your situation. My level 10 is the oldest by 5 years. And so I have a level 8 who's 12. That's great. They get along fine. They train together, but it's still it's a little bit different, right? And so I try to set a culture that was similar to mine, even with just those two, because I know how valuable it can be. So I try to simulate the things I want to see at competitions in terms of, like I said earlier, motivating your teammates and that, that building that camaraderie. I try to do that at practice too. So that way it's something they're always in and used to.
We do a lot of motivational things here in the gym too. We've talked about a lot of them before, some games and those types of things. One of the biggest motivational things I found is that our older girls that are in the group They have to be the leader in the gym. They don't want to be the leader in the gym. And we've talked about that a lot. Like, hey, you may not want that job as being the leader, but unfortunately, you are who younger girls look up to. You're the leader. So you have to own it. So we did the Big Sister, Little Sister program, which is great because now they have to motivate their little sisters. They put little messages inside their locker. And I start each day with some type of quote. Yesterday was Coach Wooden from UCLA. Everybody know who he is? Right. So, well, not to mess up this quote, but it said that talent was God given, be grateful. Fame was man given, be thankful. And conceit is self given, be careful. And so, like, trying to motivate yourselves and not being conceited, but to be confident. We like to talk about that. And we like to use gymnastics as our out. So we just show up, and our motto for the year, I said it on a couple of these podcasts, was just do gymnastics. The gymnastics that we do and train and that we've been training is always good enough to win. How does that happen? We work on just doing gymnastics. We don't work on trying to win. So we don't want so much external motivation of winning as a motivator. That's a terrible motivator, in my opinion. But if you just do gymnastics and you show up with what we train and how we train, and our program is proven over and over again to have success at the end, then you wind up winning by accident, so to speak. But for the older girls, to motivate the little ones gives them some self-motivation because they now go look for quotes and they want to put a quote in the little kid's locker. And as they're searching for that quote to motivate the little one, they're actually internally motivating themselves. So that's really helping a lot in our gym. But I too agree with what Rebecca had said, that it's burnout, right? Or it's repetitive, or it's monotonous after a while, right? So we try to change it up a little bit. We were doing a game called Chain Reaction. Anybody's ever played it on Beam? Each kid gets 2, and you have to get to 0. The problem is that you make a routine, you drop down to 1, and then you go all the way through the 7, 8 girls on the rotation. And if you make your routine, you go to 0. But if the kid in front of you, she misses her routine, you now have 1, which means we got to go back to you until you get to 0. But the whole idea is for everybody to get to 0. It gets fun unless it's the same kid falling all the time and one kid does 8 routines. But it is fun. We just maximum 3 or maximum 5, whatever your number is for the day. The other thing is, like Thomas said, hey, how many can you make? We do that often. We'll split the team in half and we'll say, okay, you have to make 25 flight series, and there's 10 girls, and nobody can count for more than 3. All 10 girls did 3 would be 30. So those are some motivational things, and then we'll go to routines after that. So instead of just always hammering routines, we like to try to put something else in there for motivational purposes. And lastly, I think I've told you before, we do the marble jar. So we have a big whiteboard in the gym, and every time you stick, it's flight series, make a bar routine, and then sticking passes on floor or staying on beam, right? Doesn't have to be a stick for the dismount. So we let all of the little ones do it too. So like they run over and they're like, I stuck a dismount. They have handstand, quarter turn dismount on beam. Like, okay, marble goes in, but we put the number really high. So it's 500. So there's this big jar and these big thing of marbles. And every time they erase the whiteboard, it just goes up and up and up. So
Nice.
that's been pretty fun.
Hey, what do you think about, so during season, there tends to hit a lull. I feel like I do a good job with making sure they're not overly fatigued because of my planning and programming. But this year we had like a good handful of girls that left for like cheerleading or something. And I feel like right in the middle of season, when it's just that grind of just routine, I see some benefit certainly on the things that you brought up there. What about, especially maybe for the younger ones, taking a break? Season we had meets every other weekend. And so I was thinking about maybe for this next year, level 2s, level 3s, maybe level 4s, like right in the middle of season, they have a 2-week gap or a 3-week gap where they don't have a routine, and you get to go like, hey, and for next year, let's really focus in on these new skills. We're always doing new skills, but to like take a week or 2 where you're like, hey, let's work level 5 stuff. And they just get to work level 5 stuff and they get to forget about their routines. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. So we have that lull every year, and every time that lull hits, I'll tell you, it's the biggest stress for me because I take my stress home with me, and I'm freaking out. We have a huge meet coming up. They didn't do well, and I don't try to show that in the gym. And what we do is our fly meet in February. So it's an optional fly meet, but we make it a point to do a team building thing while we're there. So whoever goes, it's a team builder. So they come back off of like a 3-4 day trip and they're kind of rejuvenated. The other thing we do is every Monday, because we have a bunch of weekends in a row of meets, even if it wasn't your level meet, on Monday, we do upgrades. So just because you're like a level 9 and you're training your level 9 skills, we still spend a day doing releases that you're not competing yet.
Yeah.
Trampoline or tumble track tumbling. Kids are doing double layouts and full ins and Arabian double fronts, but they can't barely do a double tuck on floor yet. But it's really fun doing off tumble track, and their technique is awesome. So someday they're going to be able to do an Arabian double front on the floor if they have the self-awareness and air awareness to be able to do it, and they love doing them. So yeah, we do those things to break up the monotony, because otherwise, to be honest, as a coach, I'm burnt. I'm on, except for Easter Sunday, which is one of my favorite holidays, but it wasn't really a break. I still had to drive to Jersey to go see my family. So I have been traveling for the last 9 weekends straight, and I have 4 more to go. And so
Right.
even those 4 more weekends to go, it's not the same kids traveling, but I'm traveling, and it's a lot of travel.
Exhausting.
So my burnout can't reflect on them. So yesterday I was just being silly, and I had a foam noodle, and I was telling them how hard you can hit yourself with a foam noodle and it doesn't hurt. And I wonder why. And I was, popping it on my head, like, here, take it, hit me on the head. And it was fun. It was just like in the mood. And okay,
Yeah.
it's Monday. We just came off of the Excel State meet. We had, 18 or 20 something kids in all weekend long. Let's just do some skill work today, or let's just pick one. Let's say we'll do a flight series today on beam, and then we'll do a dance through or something with a flight series instead of just routine. And some of these kids are getting ready to go out to Easterns, but they're not going to get any better in 2 days before we leave for the meet. So let's lighten the mood a little bit. Let's come in and just play with something that they're not going to compete this weekend. A lot of times when I was younger, I didn't want to no double backs on bars because you have to do a flyaway for level 6. And well, why not do double backs? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
you can't be afraid. And so I learned that over the years, that those are motivational tactics for these kids, and it helps prevent the burnout. And for me too, because I'm maybe tired of watching routines after a little while, and now it's rejuvenating for me. So like those are things that can really help with your motivation to get out of that lull. Because let me tell you, that lull's no good.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, I've been doing that all season so far. I've had an issue with that in previous seasons, and I feel like I've really dialed in on it and found something that works for me. Now it's a bit different because I have bigger gaps in between my meet weekends. Sometimes I have up to 4 weeks. Like I have 4 weeks from state to regionals, so that's a lot of time. Well, that's really easy to say. Okay, I can just take 2 weeks and do fun stuff to get them out of it, and then do another 2 weeks routines because that's more than enough time. So that is one way I do it. I know that's not realistic for everybody, especially you guys. Meet every weekend, every other weekend, right? But even then, I think you can work it into your routine weeks. With my athletes so far, I try to take a very I guess I want to call it maybe a realistic approach. With my really younger guys, like my level 1, 2s, and 3s, they just do what I need them to do. Typically, they don't feel the monotony like the older kids do or I do, right? They just let's
Gymnastics is
just
still
go.
fun and exciting at that age.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
It's like they can do 300 back tucks, and they're like, this is great. I'm like,
This is the best thing ever.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So I don't have to break it up with them as much, and I don't give them this similar mindset I'm about to kind of talk about here. So once they had about 10 or 11, I try to be like, this is what you need for your gymnastics, and this is what you're going to need eventually later on, right? It's not just me telling you what you need to do. This is kind of what we're going to be looking for. This is what you're going to need. Let's talk about it. What do you want to do? Dismounts, right? They don't just all have to do half and half out off I-bar when say level 10. We can do a double layout. We can do a double tucked. We can do half and half out laid out. There's choices. And that's why I think it makes it fun for them. But let me reel that back in a little bit. So like I said, with my 10, 11-year-olds, I'm level 4s, even during routine week, I'm like, hey, you have a job to do. It's 5 routines. If you can get that done and we still have time left in rotation, let's go work on what you want to work on. I tell them hey, I need to see your 4th and 5th one out of those 5. And if it's where it's the quality I want, you can go work on whatever you like. So he really likes it because my level 4 I'm talking about especially, he's like, I'm going to come in and do my job on this event, and I want to go work on my upgrades for next year, for my next level. I love it. And he loves it so much. And I started doing that with him at the start of the season, because last year I was just drilling routines with him all the time, and I've given him this option. He's super extra motivated. He won state by 4.5 points for level 4. And I'm not saying that's a direct result of how he's been training, but he's been working so hard in the gym because he knows there's some other things he can work on once he gets his job done and he cares about doing that job really well. It's not just, oh, let me get it done so I can go work on whatever, because I'm also making sure that they're where I want to be. He works really hard to make sure those routines are of the highest quality. And then the last thing I'll say is for my older guys, similar to that realistic mindset, men's gymnastics, especially, obviously all NCAA gymnastics is very hard to attain, right? It's a big deal. It's a big thing. Not everybody can do it. But for men especially, we have 13 NCAA programs. And every year, every single one of them is at risk of going away. And so it's extremely cutthroat. There's like 40 kids that get to go a year, right? And that's even just for some money. So,
Or
for my
no
level,
money, because there's 3 Division 3 teams.
exactly, yeah. And it's so difficult. Sometimes my level 10, like he's there in some areas, like, floor and vault. He's like really powerful and really talented. And we've been trying to, build our other events back up, but sometimes it can feel like, just impossible, right? That's just such a hard thing to attain. And so I took my 2 top athletes to NCAA championships, 2 weekends ago. And I'm like, hey, like you did that pass on floor, right? Half and half out, laid out. You've done that. So like, these are things that help them be like, okay, this is just what I needed to see, that maybe I'm not as far away as I thought. Now I'm going to get back in the gym and try and get that last couple extra inches of where I need to be. I think just being realistic with my athletes has been extra motivational because they get to tell me what they need and I tell them what I need from them. So that's just something I do.
So, Thomas, with your level 10, what do you do with him?
What do you mean, like specifically?
Just for seeing it up, do you do the same thing you do with like your level 4s or the example you were giving?
Right. So I have my level 1 through 10s all at practice all at the same time every day. So it's quite difficult. And I try to make sure he knows that I'm also watching him as well, but I'm also babysitting my level 1s sometimes, right? But I try to make sure everybody's working to where they need to be so that way I can give everybody the proper attention. But for him especially, once again, I give him a lot of choice. I'm like, hey, these are the things that we can do. These are things you need. Choose from this kind of area. And he sees what he likes to work on and things like that. But he's going into his senior year, and we're talking about potentially what he wants to do post high school. And I think he could be a floor vault specialist somewhere for an NCAA team potentially. So I think giving him a focus, we're like, hey, floor and vault is what we need, right? This is what we want to do. So he's like, all right, I can put a little bit more attention on this. I'm not just like, putting a little bit everywhere on all 6. That can be kind of, I almost feel like deflating, right? It's like, oh, I'm fine everywhere. But like now I'm like, hey, you're already really good in these areas. Let's continue to sharpen that. And I think he really likes that. But once the younger guys, they leave earlier than obviously my level 10s, they don't practice for 4 hours. But once they're out of the gym and it's just me and my optionals, then even if we have the option of rotations, like, hey, which event would you like to go to next? We have to hit this and this by the end of the week. Where do you want to go now? Some days schedules allow for us to, be in different places that we might not get to be normally. So I think choice is a big thing for them, especially, I have low numbers too with my optionals. Like, if I had like 10 level 10s, that's a little bit harder for everybody. Hey, where do you want to go? That's a lot tougher. But for him, especially since he's kind of on his own to a degree, letting him pick what he wants to work on within my range of what I want to offer him has been really helpful.
Yeah, that's good because I know that a lot of gymnasts that I work with, when they're the only level 10 in the gym, it's really hard for them to find that internal motivation. They wish that they had someone to look up to. They're like, I just don't see anyone doing these cool skills. So
Right.
I think it was a good idea that you took them to the tournament and they could actually watch that. Like,
Yeah, I try to do that a lot. We did Big Tens last year, and I want them to go see. This is what the goal is. I can tell you about it all day long, but actually going to see it and seeing how far away you are, once again, realistically, where am I at, is really helpful to be like, okay, maybe I really am not that far away. I can do it. I can achieve that. And, they just need to be able to buy into that themselves. They have to be confident in themselves that they can do it, not just me telling them every day, hey, you're good enough. They need to see that they're good enough. They need to see the results and see what the end goal is like in real life.
well, it's cool to be in the environment too, because like it's that intensity of being there that can just change their passion about wanting to keep working towards that goal. Okay, so let's shift into what can we do? I think Rob was giving a lot of good examples, but things that you can do daily to kind of make this motivation turn towards a long-term goal instead of just things that we do sporadically throughout the season. Because I know we do things like goal setting, we do motivational talks, and that's helpful. But I feel like the small stuff that we do day to day is more meaningful. It really can put that internal fire underneath our athletes. So some of the things that you can focus on is how you're giving feedback. What kind of vibe are you bringing into the gym as a coach? doing those check-ins with your gymnasts about their mindset, like you said, letting them pick the skills that they want to. If you're just telling them what skills to be doing when they have options, that makes it really difficult for them to find that motivation. They may not even like that skill, but they don't even want to tell you about it. So what other things that you do daily that get that buy-in from your athletes?
Yeah, I think making sure they know the process of what's going on helps out a lot. So I just went over this last night with a girl on bars, and she's trying to go level 9 next year, and she hates back giants. So we're trying to throw some front giants in there instead. So she's like, all right, so when do I need to kind of hit this mile marker? I was like, all right, well, let's work from the end and kind of bring it back so you have some perspective. So, October is when we really start doing routines, like consistently start doing routines. All right, so that means September, we need it in combination. It might not be a whole routine yet, but you need to be able to connect that skill that you don't have right now from something and into another thing, right? And then that means that August, you need to have that skill no spot by yourself. And then that means maybe July, you have it, but you're still being spotted or you're going into the pit. And that means in June, then you need to have some pretty significant progress towards that skill. Right? She's like, okay, so that means in like 2 to 4 weeks, I need to hit this drill for it, or I need to hit this kind of mile marker, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's where we need to be. And she's like, all right, so that means I've got like 4 practices to get to this next thing. And for her, that was a good motivating factor. I know for some of my gymnasts, that wouldn't have been a good motivating factor where they would have gone, I've got 4 practices to make this next jump. So I pick and choose who I do this with. But for her, she needed that. And so she needed to know, all right, at this point in time, this is when I need it. She does really well under deadlines. And she kind of needs that little bit of external stimuli of a deadline to kind of get that internal flame going.
Some of our daily things that we do every day is we make sure that every day they get to do something that has nothing to do with their routines, even when it's just a routine day. There's always something. We're on bars and they're doing routines. Pit bar's open. Let's do release drill. Let's do double tuck. The bounce bar station is in the corner for release moves, so they're using that. On beam, while you're waiting to do your routine, their laser beams are on the floor, set up into the pit. Let's work on your dismount and upgrade. So there's always something that they're working towards for the next level, even during the midst of competition season, except on say the meet week, right? So meet week, I might let them do that on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then Wednesday is off, and Thursday is just come in, touch and go. We travel Friday, compete Saturday, something
Right.
like that. For the most part, every single day they get to do something that has to do with an upgrade. And I think that's important because it's easy to get stale. And then the only comment I would like to make is on the choices. They get to pick a skill. It's great. But us as coaches also have to know that skill's not for that
Oh, yeah.
kid, right? And
Right.
so
Yes.
when you have to tell them that after they picked it, and I don't ever let them not work it, but kind of like a front, right? Front answering front on vault. It's getting safe, but these 2 kids have fronts, and I'm thinking, well, what do I do? So
Fun to do stuff like
yeah,
that.
like
Yeah.
the kid who's doing a pack, right? They're gonna pack, and turn it into an overshoot, and they get it in a week, and you're like, huh. Like, say that kid needs to do overshoot, but I want to do a pack. And hey, honey, pack's not for you. Pack's not for every show. So we try everything. And,
Right.
it's like I tell them, you throw everything at the wall and something's going to stick. And what sticks is what we go with. Not trying to tell you can't do Tkachev or Ginger or Delchev or whatever. So I do try to come up with something different for the kids that is not the norm that everybody else is doing too. That really helps to keep them a little bit engaged, so to speak.
Good to hear that. I'm glad to hear that too, because women's gymnastics gets so stuck in ruts of this is what everyone does, and so everyone has to do this cookie cutter routine. And you're like,
Yeah.
all right, but not everyone is going to be good at that skill, and it's
Yes.
okay if your entire team doesn't do your chinkos.
Look at the college gymnastics, right? And I'm not going to name
Yeah.
any teams, but there's a couple of teams out there that have a rock stock, routine. Blind change, Jaeger, front, overshoot. Maybe somebody does pack, get pan, blindfold, double. How many of those do they have? They all look the same. Which one can do it better? They're all getting 9.9s, 9.85, 9.87. Who's doing something different?
Yeah, I agree. Changing up's really good. When I do offer those options, though, I have a level 8 who I know will never ever do a back dismount off parallel bars. I know that. So when I do offer them, I'm like, hey, what dismount do you want to do? I'm making sure these are the front dismounts we can do. Pick one of these.
Cough, cough, nudge, nudge.
Right, exactly. Yes, I try to offer something. You get to know your athletes, especially as they get older.
Yeah.
You know exactly what their
Mhm.
gymnastics is, and so when I do offer those options, I make sure it's something that's in their wheelhouse. Rebecca, you also mentioned just the way you give feedback can be something that's, can be motivational and,
Yes.
keep it not so monotonous, so to say. The biggest thing for me is my athletes have trust in me, right? Because what good am I in my gym if my athletes don't want to work for me, right? If they just come in every day, just, "Oh, all right, we're at practice," that's not doing it right. They're not having a good time, then I get nothing out of them. And so I try to put my athletes attitude or like set first. I want them to be in a good mood when they're at practice. And if they even look a little bit down, I try to go figure out what that is, because I want them to have a good time being in the gym. That's what keeps them in there, is being excited to be there every day. And so I'm pretty laid back until I need not to be. But if they want to take some time in between their turn for 5 minutes to tell me what they did at school today, I'll hear it. Let's talk about it. It's not just me yelling them at what to do and whatever you want to do. They're like, "Oh, I was in at recess. Guess what I did today?" I'm like, "Tell me all about it, dude. Let's hear about it." And I want them to not be afraid to ask me things like, "Hey, like maybe instead of uh, doing this today, could I do more of these? Like maybe I feel like myself, I need more of these in this routine. Sure, please go ahead." And to let them know that I'm flexible, I feel like helps a lot. No, I'm not just like, "Oh, do whatever you want, please." That's not how it is. I know what needs to be done still at the end of the day. But go do what you need to do, especially for my older athletes. We do what we need to do. Let's just have a conversation about it. I want you to be able to feel like you can have confidence in what you want to do and be able to work for me in the gym every day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I tell my gymnasts, hey, it's my job to tell you to move on. And it's your job to tell me when you're not ready, but you also have to come up with a plan for what to do to get ready. So if it's like, hey, it's time to flip that Suk or flip that Yurchenko, they go, I'm not ready to do that yet. I'm like, all right, what's your plan? They're like, I need 3 more timers. Okay, cool. Let's do 3 more timers and let's flip today. Right. So as long as they come up with a plan, they're allowed to tell me no there. And so that way we're working together as a team and it's not just me, dictator coach, going, hey, you have to do this right now. Cause I don't know. It works, but how long does it work for?
Exactly.
Is a question, right? And then even if it works for their entire gymnastics career, how long is that career if you're doing it that way, right?
Hmm.
You can see, I'm sure every one of us has a successful gym in our area where yeah, they are super successful, but you notice that it's like a different set of kids almost every year. And they're like, yeah, you're crazy successful and you've sent some kids to college, but you haven't had anybody make it through your whole program yet. And I think those clubs get caught up in they see the success they have and they forget about all the kids that were left behind. And so making sure that you do know your kids, like Thomas was saying, is important. Making sure that you're an approachable coach is important.
Hmm.
And making sure that that you're not dictator coach, but coach that's willing to work with you is good.
Yeah, I'd like to add in there too for the coaches that are out there listening to this, to motivate yourself a little bit even, right? Some of us coach only certain levels. Here at our gym, I coach everybody from the pre-team all the way up. I'm not going to say that I spend 6 hours a week or 4 hours a week with the pre-teamers, but I give them a good half hour a week. I give my level 3s a full day of practice and my level 4s get a full day of practice with just me and my assistant. So go down into your classes and stop by a class when you're walking by for 5 minutes and work with a kid who's doing a back handspring with one of your junior instructors. And then, that kid comes in next week and be like, hey, Mr. Thomas, I want to show you my back handspring. And like those engagements for you as a coach will make you a little bit more motivated too. Remember that they're just kids that want to do gymnastics. I've been saying, and I'll continue to say for the rest of my life, I don't just love gymnastics. I love teaching children who love doing gymnastics. Much bigger thing there. Like engaging with the kids and being approachable. Yes. Do I want to know every single day what they're doing? No. But we do in the beginning, we talk about their day, how was their day, what's coming up in school, any big projects, did you have any tests? Because those things are important for me to know what's going on in their brains. And like yesterday was hysterical. They were talking about geography and they wanted to know why Alaska was so close to Mexico. I said, huh?
Oh gosh.
Why did they give me a map and Hawaii and Alaska are down here at the bottom? Did no one tell you why? Like those are the last 2 states. So here's the United States and all the states are in there, Florida, blah, 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 blah. And so they just put them over here. They're the other 2 states. That's not where they are. Like, oh, I thought Hawaii was right next to Alaska. I'm like, oh my God.
The amount of times I've had conversations like that with my gymnast where I'm like, whoa, wait, hang on. Or like even like simple vocabulary stuff where I'll say a word and they're like, what's that mean? I'm like, "You- how do you not
Yeah.
know what that
Yeah,
word
yeah,
means?
yeah. So you ask the
Oh
kids, like,
gosh.
what's your coach's biggest fault? They'll say math.
Yes,
and
yeah.
the other people would be like, what? Yeah, Mr. Rob can't do math. No, you're right. I cannot do math. We were talking about the Pythagorean theory, right? I couldn't even pronounce it right. They were kept correcting me. So I'm like,
Pythagorean
okay,
theorem.
I just know it. It's just one of those things. I'm like, I don't know. So what do you do with that? And they're like, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I'm like, okay, listen, here's one for you. You take a briefcase with $1 million and set it on the table in $100 bills, and you put that in front of me for a piece of paper and ask me to do this Pythagorean theory, and then I'm going to, in 2 minutes, give you back the briefcase because I just can't do it. I don't know, like, what are the numbers? Like, I don't even know what that means. What do you want me to tell you? Do you want me to tell you every muscle in the human body? I'll tell you that. When we give you bones, I'll give you that. Do you want to learn how to do a Yurchenko from start to finish? We can do that all day long. Ask me to do math. And then just, it blows them away that I just don't know. I don't know what to
No,
tell you.
I'm right there with you. I was so bad at math, they told me to stop taking math in high school.
Yeah, right.
No, true story. They're
Well,
like, you
Really?
shouldn't take calculus. I was like, that's not a problem. I wasn't going to.
I was getting ready to graduate in college, and I graduated outstanding senior in my major, okay? Which is fantastic. No one in the world would ever thought those words would come out of my mouth. And I went to the dean of my department. I said, I need a math class. And she said, you're graduating. You're done math out. You're out of here. And she knew I couldn't do math.
Oh,
Gosh.
gosh.
Okay, well, I'm just glad that all your gymnasts are very comfortable saying these things to you guys. So that means that you have a trusted
We
relationship in your
do.
gym. Because we see those gyms, like we said, like at competition, you'll see those kids who are amazing and they're all amazing, but you can tell that they're scared to talk to their coaches.
Absolutely.
And you can just see the fear on their face. So I think this is a good transition into what not to do, what to avoid.
Yep.
Because even with the best intentions, sometimes motivational efforts can fall short if, one, they're inconsistent, if, we're trying to put all the gymnasts in one box, if we're disconnected from the training as coaches. And sometimes coaches unintentionally send mixed signals. So, like, emphasizing long-term goals, but not showing up, not praising them for those little wins, or talking about motivation and then using sarcasm or frustration when their gymnasts are struggling. I see that a lot. We act upbeat, but how we're responding to our athletes is not that way. And that makes them feel defeated. It mixed signals. It's hard for them to follow that. And then another trap is only addressing motivation when things go wrong. I don't know if you've seen those kind of coaches. They don't have any of this stuff in their gym until they start to see maybe that burnout or things happening. So we're more reactive instead of proactive at this point. So let's talk about what to avoid. And I want to hear what you guys have to say. But one thing I really want to throw out there quick is I know coaches use this, but it's so hard for me to encourage people doing this, and that is bribing. I get that, we've talked about this on so many episodes, and I agree that for certain athletes, external rewards might be helpful. It might give them that extra push, but it can be a part of what motivates them but destroys other gymnasts. So more often than not, I've seen that it backfires. And this is why. It's because bribes rely on external motivation. And at first, sure, it sounds exciting. The team gets hyped. The gymnast feels like it's going to boost their energy. They're actually going to get this skill. But then we're talking about a gymnast who's already feeling anxious about a skill. So now we're adding emotional layers to this. No longer just fear of the skill. They're having to deal with the pressure of not letting their team down because it turned into some challenge or some bribe. And then they might feel guilty that they can't follow through if they don't do it. They might be letting their coach down. And there's just like this heap of embarrassment that can weigh them down. So what could start out as very motivational becomes a source of added pressure and emotional overload for a lot of these gymnasts. And in that state, most gymnasts shut down versus becoming more motivated. They become hesitant, and then a lot of them don't even want to show up. So can you guys tell me a time maybe when motivation for you maybe went the wrong way?
Go ahead, Ian.
Well, I was gonna say real quick on the bribing thing. I think there's like lots of terrible ways to use bribing. I think the only time that I've used it and felt good about it would be when it doesn't take 100% to get the reward, where a percentage can mess up and things still happen. So if it's like, all right, if every single one of you scores a 9.5 this weekend on bars, then we'll do like that's unreasonable because then it does that one person, right? But if you kind of go, all right, we need 70% hit, or I used to do just as like as a line tumbling thing, we would go round off tucks or round off handspring tucks. I need 5 sticks. There's 9 of you. As soon as we get 5 sticks, we'll move on to the next thing. And so they all tumble down. Only like 2 of them would stick. I'm like, all right, come on now, we can do better than that, right? And so then we get 5, 6 out of the 9, and it's not a big deal then at that point. So I think stuff like that is a little bit more.
I am not hitting 100%. I like that outlook with it.
Yeah, I try to like almost never use bribery personally. That's just like a thing that I've never really liked because in my very first gym, I did that a little bit, and then they would start doing things like a mushroom. I was like, "Oh, can we break our record on the mushroom?" And they'd be like, "What do I get?" And I'm like, oh, "Okay, this is now we've gone too far." And
Right.
so the only time I ever do is it's not for like a physical reward. It's never like, oh, like candy or something. It's like I'll give you some trampoline time, another activity in the gym's like gymnastics for you to like go have fun. That's a little different for me. I try to never like offer something that like like physical to give them. What I always say is I've had this happen a couple times now. Like they'll break their mushroom rate, be like, "What do I get?" And be like, "You get better mushroom. That's what you get." Like, okay, I guess. I'm like, yeah. So I try to, because that's the behavior I don't want to be in my gym. Then we're doing things for the wrong reasons, and so that's just something. I'm sure there are ways I could, like Ian said, work bribery in a way like that. I do like that example you gave. I think that's really good as well. But currently, I try to do little to none unless it's for something like an extra activity in the gym or something like that.
So I'll give an example of where it completely failed multiple times. It's because we got to go back to it, right? We failed. We got to try it again. So like take the compulsory kids. You got 18 kids. If everyone stays on beam, they get an ice cream party. Well, I'm like, I'm not getting ice cream for these kids. Okay. So I step into the coaches like, okay, everybody stays on beam. You don't have to stick, but you can't fall off. And we can do a fruit party. We get a big bowl of fruit and the kids get a fruit party. That's great. 17 kids and the 18th kid is left to go. All she needs to do is make it. You think those kids aren't all over? You guys, you better make this. If you don't get this, we don't get the fruit party. And the kid's falling, right? So there's an epic fail. So that's one to not do that I used to like to do. If everybody stays on beam, we get a reward. We used to do, and I may bring this one back. I don't know, because it had a little bit of an epic fail also. For each level, they had it, or like it was a crown for one group. It was a bell for another group. It was a cape for another group. It was sunglasses, and you get to wear it at the end of practice. You get to wear it out of the gym, and then you get to come back the next day. And then the next day, we would let that gymnast pick who they thought worked the hardest. So it was kind of a reward system like, hey, it's a great practice. You all did good, but today, Dr. Ian, he was the most exceptional. He gets the crown. And you're like, hey, this whole big thing. And the next day we come in, Dr. Ian, he forgets it, leaves it at home. He gets stuck in his house for like 2 weeks. Epic fail, right? But I do like it because the kids get involved in picking somebody else who worked hard. And it doesn't always have to be the bestest athlete, right? It's who worked the hardest or gave their all for the day. So those were fun, but they can epically fail you when two kids keep giving it back and forth to each other. So then you have to set some parameters, right? You can only get the thing once in the course of a week or once in the course of a month or something so that the same two kids don't get the crown and they just keep passing it back and forth. So that
Or you
was an
could
epic
set
fail.
those parameters too. Like one day it could be who uses their mental training or who fought through a challenge or something like
Right.
so they're paying attention to each other, but in a
Correct.
good way.
Hey, today it's beam, who had the best beam, tomorrow vault, and something like that.
I think an example of an epic fail for motivation that I tried at one point in time when I was a much younger coach, and the head coach had a health scare, and so he was going to be out of the gym for a while. And again, I was kind of brand new to the gym, and these girls were still at the point of not really trusting me to spot and do things. And so I gave them the old, well, who knows how long this coach is going to be out for. And if you want to get this skill, then I need to be able to spot you and blah, 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 right? And that didn't work at all. They just completely shut down. They just like stopped listening the rest of the day. Complete backfire on my part on that one. So instead, maybe what I should have done is start to, go back on basics and spot them through some of those things, talk to them about how I'm going to spot things, talk to them about what they're worried about, and actually get their opinion on it versus me trying to be, again, that dictator coach of just like, this is how we're going to do it, and you don't get a say, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, we see
Especially not
that.
with teenage girls.
We see that
Oh,
at
no.
camp very often. I'm sure Dr. Ian could probably attest to this one too. We go to camps and we get in there. The kids like, "Hey, will you spot my giant?" I'm like, "Did you ever do one before?" "No, but my coach said you're a great spotter. Like, so can you just spot me?" So, or you're asking a kid and they're doing some drills for a giant or something, and then you want them to go, and then the kid doesn't give it their all. So the kid doesn't trust you. And I always tell the kid, "Hey, good on you. That you were a little apprehensive on doing the skill. You don't know me. You don't know if I can spot. Like, just the first time you ever met me. So like those things can be epic fails too. Like telling a kid to go and like, I got you, and you don't have them. So that's something to do too.
Okay, so I think that's probably a wrap on today's episode of keeping gymnasts engaged and motivated. Let's just review a few things at work that we discussed throughout this time. So using those quick check-ins, getting to know our athletes, asking them how their days are, using visual reminders. I know Rob in a previous episode talked about having positive self-talk statements around the gym and having your athletes involved in them. And one thing that Ian did that he recently told me about was challenging negative thoughts. So it's a post that I did, and he put it on a board. He talked about it with his athletes, and now they can look at it, and if they're thinking negatively, then they can answer these questions and see where maybe it's coming from. And then building feedback into your practice, changing how you give feedback, asking them questions that engage them more. What went well? How would you make these corrections? Those kind of things. And then most importantly is showing up in a way that is motivating for us and for them. So gymnasts feed off of our energy, right? So if we come into the gym, we're frustrated, we're angry, they can tell. If we're showing signs of burnout, that's going to rub off on them. So that's really important to pay attention to how we're presenting ourselves in the gym. Coaches, we have an incredible opportunity to shape our gymnast experience. And when we get that right, motivation becomes something that carries them, not something that we have to force. So we'd love to hear from you. Give us your thoughts on strategies that work in your gym, what's challenging in your gym right now when it comes to motivation. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone that would benefit from the conversation. So thank you for joining us here at the NGA podcast. And until next time, stay happy, healthy, and high performing.